Hello and welcome to the first in my monthly Patreon video series where I will be sitting down and talking about a different topic every month exclusively for $4 plus Patreon subscribers. I'm slightly out of breath because I just ran up the stairs from the postman. No, I didn't run from the postman, but I went to get the post and then run back up the stairs. The first post that I said I would do on my Patreon video series was a post about my career. Now, you may have seen that once a month I'm now doing a career series. So the first Monday of every month there will be a series called How I Got My Job, and I chose myself as the first person basically so I could talk through my career and I suppose kind of show people what the piece was going to look like, because I'm trying to get other people to do it. So you probably have seen a lot of the outline of what my career was. So I guess I wanted to get more into the kind of nitty-gritty of different aspects of it. This might be particularly interesting for somebody who wants to get into journalism, or it might just be interesting to somebody who wonders what the good sides and what the bad sides are. So I just want to have a really candid chat about it. It's times like these actually that I kind of wish I was a beauty blogger so I could do my makeup while I talk, because then I would have something to do with my hands rather than just like swiveling on my chair. So I guess to start with, I mean, I'm not going to go into the here's where I went to college, here's what I did in college, here's where I went to college next. But in terms of my career, I started out at, I guess, what a lot of people would consider a career high. And I know that I definitely did at the time. The first job that I got in journalism, like from my master's, was at the Irish Times. And I guess for a lot of Irish journalists studying, the Irish Times would be kind of where you want to go. Maybe the Irish Times, the Irish Independent, or then if you're very committed to kind of fashion glossy magazines, you might think Image or Irish Tatler. The Irish Times was a dream come true. Like, I thought I was so lucky. And to be clear, I was, because the reason that I got into the Irish Times was I was doing my master's. A friend of my cousin's was working there at the time, and she told my cousin that they were looking for casual sub-editors and asked her did she know anybody. So through that contact, I got in, I did a trial day, and I kind of never left. Well, I obviously did, but I didn't leave for a while. It was 100% luck. It was down to who I knew. Would I have got it if I hadn't done my master's? Probably not. But I genuinely don't think that my journalism master's taught me that much. And I know that that's kind of a ridiculous thing to say, but I feel like working in journalism taught me 10 times more. Like when I left my master's, I did not know how to pitch a feature. I did not know how kind of freelancing worked. I had no clue about paying your own taxes, about invoicing, about the conditions that you should put on your invoice. So I went in, I did 1 day a week, maybe 2 days a week for a couple of weeks while I was doing my MA. And it was while I was there that I got asked to write a feature, or to write a really tiny, like literally it was I think 300 words. I actually probably still have it somewhere, because I'm sure I kept it as my first published piece because it had my byline on it. But it was teeny tiny. And that was kind of, it was from being in there and like getting the opportunity to write something. And then after that, I would start trying to pitch things and come up with ideas. I also decided really early on that I would basically try to suck up to everyone. And I think that's probably a tip that can be applied to any workplace. Not at the expense of your own principles, or if somebody's a total dick, or if somebody's harassing you. I'm not saying that you should suck up to them, but I basically tried to make it so that if my hours got cut, people would notice. That I was like, I'm going to try and make friends with the editor of the magazine. I'm going to try and chat to the health editor. I'm going to try and be really friendly to everyone I meet in the lift so that people know my name. And that if they're thinking, who could write that for me, that they might occasionally think of me. And that's basically how I approached it. And like, it helps as well that I am quite, like, as I've got older, I think I'm more introverted in the sense that I like to have time to myself, and I definitely need that. But I'm also a very friendly person, and I can kind of chat to anyone, and I know that that's a real advantage that not everyone has. But that was definitely something that I tried to use. What I didn't have in, like, I don't think I was ever the most amazing journalist. I think I'm a good writer. I think I can write things. I'm not very good at news stuff, because I never seemed to quite get a grasp on what the real news story is, if you know what I mean. Like, if I was reporting on something that had happened, or a meeting or a protest or something, I could get the facts down, but I couldn't ever really see into it to go, what is this saying about wider society? What is this saying culturally or politically? That was never really my jam. I was good at writing features. And I totally, like, while I was there as well, there were some major fuck-ups. Like, I went to a Britney Spears concert and I was writing the review on my phone from the concert because it had to be filed before 10:30 or something. And I remember the concert wasn't over by 10:30, but I had looked up her set list that she had done for the previous 5 or 6 gigs in the same tour. So I knew which songs were coming up. So I wrote about them as if she had sung them, and she didn't sing the last one. So then we got all these letters to the paper being like, was your reviewer even at the concert? Like, she didn't sing that song, which was really embarrassing. And obviously I was at the concert, and I love Britney Spears, which was even more embarrassing because it just felt like I wasn't a fan at all. So yeah, I worked there for I worked as a sub-editor for 3 years, and then I think I went fully freelance and I was doing some fashion stuff for the paper. I was doing the fashion blog, which I pitched myself. And I guess that's something as well. I was reading a piece today about how to be successful as a freelancer, and one of the things was to advocate for yourself and to ask for what you want. And I think at the time my sister was studying fashion, my sister had finished studying fashion, was a fashion designer at the time. And so fashion was something that I was very interested in. I bought all the fashion magazines. I was really into designers and catwalks, and I would watch all the shows. So I really wanted to write something about fashion, and I went to the online editor and said, you don't have a fashion blog and I think you need one, because I'd seen that The Guardian had one and the New York Times had one. I was reading Refinery 29. So that was one of the things that I want to do this, and I'm going to try and find a way to do it. And obviously the editor at the time could have said no, but he said yes, because they were trying to build up the blog content. I think at the time the website for the Irish Times was less, it didn't contain a lot that was in the actual paper. It was different, it was separate, because they didn't really believe in giving content away for free. Obviously how things have changed. So yeah, I went fully freelance and I started writing for a whole load of different places. And to be honest, it was probably a lot of that was facilitated by the fact that it was a very good time in my life for my mental health. I was working really hard. I was working a lot of hours, probably working like 50 or 60 hours a week. I was writing for the Times. I was doing some stuff for TV3. I was doing Expose. Because I had written fashion for the Times, someone from Expose had reached out and asked me to come and do a segment on, I think the very first one I did was like Deb's fashion or something. And I did a piece on outfits from Covet in the Paris Square Centre. So that was the very, very first piece that I did for Expose. And then I started getting asked to go on the fashion panels, and I would do a little bit of radio, and I would pitch things. I would try and pitch things as well to women's magazines. So I was kind of quite careful not to pitch to competitors, because even though I wasn't staff at the Irish Times, I kind of felt like I was, and I felt like that was my main job, which it was, like financially and in terms of time. So I'd pitch stuff to people who were not competitors, like Image and Irish Tatler. And I was doing more and more styling. And again, like the news beat, styling was never really going to be my thing. Like, I really enjoyed styling shoots and I really enjoyed the finished product, but I didn't have a vision for the art of it. Like, I could put clothes together, but I could never put them together in a way that would make you stop and go, that's really unusual, that's really incredible. Like some fashion shoots that I see now, you know, when you open a magazine, you're like, you would never wear all those things together, but the photograph looks like a painting. I could never ever do that. Like, I could do a nice shoot where the clothes were wearable. I mean, it was grand, it was stuff, it was like the pages you'd see in a magazine where it was like, here are 5 things to buy to wear this weekend, like, you know, easy high street stuff. Like, that's the kind of styling that I did. I was never going to be amazing. So I did that for a couple of years, freelancing. Then I was freelance for 5 or 6 years. No, sorry, I was freelance for 3 years when my column got dropped in the Irish Times. And that was another massive blow, because, and you know what, one of the worries that I always had was, when I got into the Irish Times, I was always afraid that I'd peaked too soon. This was my dream job, this was my dream company, and I got in there too soon and things were going to go tits up, and they did, basically. I had a fashion column in the Irish Times that got dropped. I think they just wanted to do something else. And I totally got it as well. Like, I think in hindsight, I was getting bored of it, and it really showed. Like, and that's one of the things as well when you're a features journalist. If you're writing about something that you're bored of, it's very, very obvious. So at the time I was devastated, and I felt like it was really personal. And I think at the same time, I was still pitching stuff to different editors in the Times, and a couple of my things didn't get picked up in a row, maybe 4 or 5 pieces. And I remember at the time just thinking, they hate me. I was just like, they've decided they hate me. They don't want to use me anymore. And in hindsight, I don't think that was true. Maybe some people in there didn't like me. I'm sure that's true. But I think I kind of got it in my head that, like, this is a real personal affront and they don't want me, and no, I'm fucked. Because so my column for the Irish Times, my fashion column that I was doing, was bringing in, I think, €1,000 a month at the time, and €250 a week, so a little bit over 1,000. And that was paying my rent and covering some of my bills. Rent was not as insane in Dublin then as it is now. So I was really freaked out that I was like, what am I going to do now? So when a job came up at Stellar magazine, I went and I did that. You know what? There was actually some bits in between. Like, I worked for a company called dreamwedding.com. That was this wedding game that was being launched on Facebook, and they wanted to put an editorial site to go with it so that they'd have content, I think basically for SEO purposes. So yeah, I worked for this wedding site where the game basically never happened. I think it was very ambitious. Like, it would have been a fun game if it had worked out, but it was one of those things that just did not gather steam. The way it was being funded was they were going to wedding suppliers and asking them to pay to be included in the game. So basically you would plan a wedding in the game, and you would go and you would pick your flowers, and say your flowers would be choices from like Bloombox and Appassionata and the Garden at Paris Square. So they were relying on all those vendors to pay to be in the game so that their products would get seen by women who were planning weddings. So it's kind of convoluted, but it paid really well. And it was really nice to just do something for a while that was paying, and I didn't have to shill for freelance work. I was still doing a little bit here and there, but I really didn't have to graft as much because I was basically getting a wage, which was amazing for the first time in about 5 years. So after that, then a job came with Stellar magazine for deputy editor. And I think I decided, you know what, I'm going to try and give magazines a go. And actually at the same time, I had applied for a job in Duns to do, I basically pitched them and said, you need someone to come in and do your social media because it like wasn't great at the time. And I was like, this needs an overhaul. So I'd gone in there, I got to like, I think a second or third round of interviews. And basically when it came around, I'd been offered the job at Stellar at the same time. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to stick with journalism because I'm not quite ready to jump into branded just yet. And in hindsight, that was the right decision for me because anytime that I've tried to go in-house or to do branded stuff, I just don't care. I don't really care about making money for people. I care about writing about things that are meaningful to me. Like when I was working at Stellar, granted I was making money for someone, but I was also getting to write about women with endometriosis. I was getting to interview women in direct provision. I wrote a piece about women who were experiencing homelessness. And it wasn't, I mean, I definitely, like I wrote fluff pieces as well. Do you know what I mean? I wrote like the best shit to buy to make your pillow smell great for your bedtime, you know. So it wasn't all worthy, but I got to write some really great pieces that I really loved writing. And I stayed in Stellar for about 1.5 years. And then basically my Instagram and Snapchat following was blowing up. And I realized when I got approached by a few different brands to do a few different jobs, I was like, I can actually make this wage from posting shit on Instagram, which seemed like a much nicer and easier way of making a living. But I think what I'd forgotten really was when, and I mean, I'm experiencing this now as well, but when all of your content revolves around you, any criticism of your content is really, really personal. And like when you're, I mean, I don't agree that when you put yourself out there, you have to expect stuff. But like when you put yourself out there, you do get a lot of feedback or criticism or critique from people. And it can be really, really hard to take when your product is yourself and that's what you write about all the time. That's what you post about all the time. And you're relying on that for your money. And I also, you know what, at the time I was blogging and I would write kind of, I would write pieces that I really liked writing and they would get maybe 500 views. And then I would write something kind of semi-controversial about how people shouldn't overexpose their kids on social media or calling someone a scumbag is classist. And they would blow up and I would get like 2,000, 3,000 views on them. But at the same time, I would get 500 comments on a Facebook page or on a forum basically talking about what a dick I was. And that was really, really hard to take. I mean, obviously that's really hard to take. I think it would be hard for anyone. And like, I can absolutely back up my opinions and say, I fully believe that one, for example, should not overexpose their children on social media. And that's not to say, I don't think you should ever put a photo of your child on social media. But I think putting up their every move is just takes a bit of agency away from that child. And I wouldn't personally do it, I don't think. Although my friends always say, you just wait now when you have kids, they're going to be all over Instagram. Maybe they will. Maybe I'll be looking for the kids BonCon. So yeah, that was really, really difficult. And I think around the same time, a few kind of weird things happened. I wrote a piece about my experience of being raped or of a non-consensual sexual experience in college. I got a lot of shit about that. There was a huge post on boards about how I was lying and I just regretted it and I was making it all up. It Gals did a whole podcast about how I was making it up. And around that same time, I think I got these, I woke up one morning and there were balloons taped to my door that basically said like, they called me which was kind of inventive actually, they called me a thalidomide looking gal bag. So I think I probably was really close to having a breakdown at that point where I was finding it really difficult. I was also, I had tied into a few different kind of brand commitments and there would come these days where I'd be like, I have decided that I'm going to upload, or I've said that I'm going to upload these Instagram posts on Tuesday. And come Tuesday, I would be like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? I feel so grim. I've been crying all day. I have barely got out of bed. And now I have to go up and pretend that I'm having a great time making this granola. And that kind of stuff was really, really hard. Like people don't really talk that much about the performative aspect of Instagram because there's a perception that you're just getting paid to like live your life. And you're actually not. You're getting paid to live your life by someone else's schedule. And you wake up on Wednesday and you're feeling shit or your kid's sick or your car's broken down. But it doesn't matter because you've committed to doing these 3 posts about how great your life is now that you're taking X supplement or how wonderful your life is when you include this shampoo or whatever it is. So this was all going on. I was feeling really burnt out. I was feeling really vulnerable and really like picked on in a way. I mean, some of it was like, stop writing about what people should do with their kids, Rosemary. Save yourself the trouble. But then the other part of me was like, well, I need to get these hits on my blog. Like I need to get people looking at my page. I need to get people talking about me. So it was a real double-edged sword. And I was not really going out very much. I wasn't really going to events anymore. I just wasn't really doing a lot. And when I went into town or when I went out, I would feel really paranoid that like somebody would be there and they would know me and they would hate me, but I wouldn't know who they were. And like there was another event I went to, I think for Super Value, and Brezzy was there, and like I had basically slagged Brezzy off on Twitter a couple of months previously, and he'd pulled me up on it because I'd forgotten that we followed each other. I wasn't really slagging him, but I was just like, I think it was about The Voice, and I was saying like Brezzy was never a superstar or something. And he was like, have you forgotten that we follow each other? Anyway, I went to the Super Value event and Brezzy was there, and I literally broke out in a cold sweat that I was like, I need to get out of this room. And it wasn't that I thought he was going to do anything, like, and he totally ignored me. I just felt so gross that I was like, oh, this person that I had this stupid altercation with about nothing, like entirely of my own doing, is now in this room, and I feel so uncomfortable. It was like I felt uncomfortable in myself. I think that was probably what it was over those couple of months. Like I wanted to crawl out of my own skin or crawl out of my own body. I didn't want to be Rosemary McCabe anymore. So I got a job in an apartment, like a short-term apartment rental company, part hotel company. And I did that for a couple of months, and I liked that well enough. I was writing content for them. I was kind of boring, but like I really liked the guys I was working with. I had a female manager, and then she had left a couple of weeks after I had joined, which was unfortunate because she was lovely. So I worked there for a couple of months, and then actually that manager asked me to come with her to the next company that she was at, which was Fields the Jeweler. So I'm sure you remember, well, if you've been following me for a while, you'll remember that I worked for them for a couple of months, and that was really nice too. But I think those two jobs really proved to me that I was like, I don't really want to spend my time selling things to people. Like that's not what interests me. And I know that sounds really kind of highfalutin or something, like we don't all get a choice to have our dream jobs, and sometimes you just have to suck it up and work. But I think around the same time as I was at Fields anyway, I had been doing my podcast. I'd set up Patreon for my podcast. My Patreon was growing. I'd moved my money diaries over onto Patreon. And I kind of got to a point, like I was at Stellar, where I went, I can actually make a living from this full time. So I decided to try that. I think mental health wise, I was probably doing okay. But I just realised that I really missed having the freedom of working for myself. I really missed spending time with my dog. I really found it difficult to work on someone else's schedule. And that's true for a lot of people. Like you have to work from 9 to 5. You have to be productive from 9 to 5. I'm the most productive from 5 to 9 in the evening. I'm not productive at lunchtime. I'm productive at, between 8 and 10 in the morning sometimes. So I think there's probably a break, like a crucial point at which you can't go from freelance to working. And I think it's 7 years. I think overall I did about 8 or 9 years freelance. But I think after 7 years of freelancing, it's really, really difficult to go back to a full-time job and to just adhere to someone else's schedule and to obey someone else's rules. I think it's hard, and it was definitely difficult for me. So that's how I ended up doing what I'm doing now, which is writing full-time for Patreon, writing semi-full-time on my book, which will hopefully be out next Valentine's Day, and which I'm currently crowdfunding on Unbound. Essentially, I went with Unbound because I had pitched to a couple of different agents, probably not enough. I probably didn't pitch it enough, but I pitched to a couple of different agents in Ireland, and I got some feedback that was like, no, we don't really like this. Like, it's kind of like Emily Pine, but it's not as good, which is probably accurate. But someone else then said, like, why don't you turn it into fiction? And that's really not what I wanted to do. Whereas with Unbound, they were basically like, we like the idea, and if you can prove that you have an audience for it by getting the publication costs crowdfunded, which is how Unbound works, then we will publish it for you. Now, the crowdfunding covers the cost of publication, which includes marketing, PR, promotion, editing. Like, they proofread it, they edit it, they come back to you and say, no, we want you to change X, Y, Z. So other than the actual crowdfunding part, it's really, really similar to a traditional publisher. So that's where I am now. I am finishing, hopefully, my book in the next couple of months. I am also hopefully getting my book funded in the next couple of months. And I'm writing, and I'm living with my parents because I'm waiting to find out the adjudication from my visa application to move to the States, where my boyfriend and my sister and her kids and her husband are. I do have one free thing for you as a congratulations for watching to the very end of this video. It is a copy of Gaff Goddess, the new book by Irish woman and DIY genius Laura DeBarra. So I have one copy of that book to give away to one lucky patrons. If you watch this far and you would like a copy of that book, please leave the lips emoji as a comment below, and I will pick somebody from that before Sunday, February 16th. So if you watch this video before Sunday, February 16th, you get to the end, leave a comment with the lips emoji, and I will put you in the draw, and one person will be getting that book sent out to them. Thank you so much for watching this far. Thank you so much for supporting me on Patreon. I appreciate it so, so much. If you like what I do here, please like, comment, tell a friend, tweet about it, all that good stuff, or else just hang around. And thank you so much. This means, it feels cheesy when I say it, but it has meant so much to me to be able to live a life that I never really thought I would be able to live, because I thought that if I wrote my book I would be doing it part-time while I worked full-time to basically pay my bills. And now I'm able to take so much more time to focus on, I mean, my art sounds too wanky, but like to focus on the thing that I'm really passionate about. And I am so grateful, because every day isn't a struggle anymore, and it was there for a while. And all of that, I was going to say some of that, all of that is down to you, and medication and therapy, but mostly down to you. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.